my name is Josue Bustos. I'm an indie dev coming from LA to the Bay. And today I'm going to be talking about, or just giving you a little run through on how to create a Samsung Galaxy Watch, just in case you decide to get into the wearable space, create solutions for wearables and whatnot. So I know we're going through some troubleshooting earlier today and getting Tizen set up. I'm just going to, just for everybody watching out there, I want to go through the initial setup. The first thing you got to do is download Tizen Ide. The most recent version of Tizen Studio is 3.5. If you visit developer.tizen.org, you get access to that. And then another thing I want to mention is that if you do own a Samsung watch and you want to deploy to the hardware, you will need to create a Samsung account. So if you go visit account.samsung.com, you will be able to create an account there. And during the initial development, I'll show you how to. There's going to be a window. It's going to pop up. It's going to ask you for an account and to enter your credentials. Another thing I want to note, in case after we finish today with the initial basic setup and installation, and if you're curious about learning more how to use the APIs, web APIs, you could also go back to developer.tizen.org to learn more on how to access other sensors, the alarms, gyro, GPS, etc. And to access that, you just simply go to developer.tizen.org. Under Development, Guides, Web Application, and you'll definitely see next to the Web Application link that there's other languages that you can use to access hardware sensors. Cool. So with that, I'll definitely jump in. So I've downloaded Tizen IDE and set it up, and now I'm gonna open it up. And I'll come back if I know we're troubleshooting, and then I'll come back to some of you guys to set that up. So once it's installed, I think this might look familiar to some of you. If not, then you were born pretty early into this recent age. But so the Tizen IDE is built on top of Eclipse. I do want to mention something here that the .NET development environment is now using, which has now recently been supporting the development for creating Samsung Galaxy Watches. They're using Visual Studio Code, and they do have a plugin where you can develop Samsung watches. Hopefully, in the recent future, they're going to create plugins and support for creating Samsung watches using web development or just web technologies in general. But today, we're going to be using the Tizen IDE Studio for JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay. One more thing I want to show is the package manager, which is the area where some folks were having issues with. This is where you install all the OS versions and SDKs to develop specific apps for the hardware. So I think the most recent OS that's installed on the Samsung Galaxy Watch is 4.0. And I think 5.0 is going to be coming out pretty soon. This is a really quick overview of how that looks like, really quick. So today we're going to be working with the 4.0. And to install applications onto the actual device, we're going to need to install the Samsung certificate and to create apps templates and whatnot, you're going to need to install the Samsung Wearable extension. And I'll show you where this is actually is initiated during our development process. And so next, so now we're going to get actually into it. I'm actually created a basic template Samsung Galaxy Watch app application using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Raise of hand, how many of you guys are web developers? How many of you are native app web developers? Everybody? Okay. Anybody that do C# or C++? Cool, 2 guys. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and start a new project. I'm going to go to click that link there. There's a few ways to do it. This is to find a new Tizen project. You can just click on this little icon here, or create a new Tizen project there. The easiest way you can do it, just click on this. The first thing you're going to see is this window with 2 options. The template, it's bare bones. It doesn't give you any sample code with that sample code that allows you to access the hardware systems. It's purely bare bones. I'm going to show you really quickly what that looks like. So sample, wearables, I'm going to select 3. Again, you have 2 options if you want to work with C++ or the web. You're able to. And then when this is happening, it's actually going to the cloud and getting sample apps. So you might need the internet for this. And you could definitely just browse through the sample projects if you like. So here's one. Another one. So I'm going to go back. And today we're going to be using just a really basic one just to get started. Click Next. Select Wearable. And really quickly, if you notice, there's 3 other options on this. So there's one for mobile, one for TV. And here's a custom one. If you notice, yeah, again, like I mentioned before earlier in the morning, is that you can create these apps for not just for wearables, but also you can create apps for the TV. Click Next. I'm going to select the web application section. There's 3 basic types. There's a widget. Here's a template that allows you to use the input, which is a little small mini keyboard on the watch. Today we're going to create a basic Samsung Watch app. And then I could call this, I'm just going to call this basic UI. Just leave it as is. Click Finish. So that's what it looks like when you create a super basic Samsung Galaxy Watch app. One thing I want to mention is the config XML file that Tizen Ide generates. This config file is kind of similar to the other XML files like Android or in the iOS development. It gives you an XML file where you have specific, you have to enter specific information to access certain things from the OS, and also gives you some capabilities to access privacy, to let the user know that you're going to access, the camera, the hardware storage, etc. So, any questions so far? Questions? No? Okay. So I'm going to quickly just go through this config XML file because we are going to use it. We're going to have to enter some information here that will allow us to access hardware sensors. The first thing I'm going to go to the privileges tab. So here is where I would have to select a specific. If I want to access specific sensors from the hardware, this is where I go to. Once I select one of these checkboxes, I'm telling the hardware that this is the information I want to access on the watch. So today I'm going to want to access health information, which is the heart rate monitor and the step count. So in order to do that, the first thing I got to do is actually search for health info. And just press OK. And save it. It's another step that we have to do here. Go to Features. And locate the sensor heart rate monitor. Okay. Cool. And save that. So another quick side, if you notice, it looks pretty familiar, right? If you worked with web development before, pretty simple file structure, CSS, JavaScript, and your index. So I'm going to open that up really quickly. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward setup. One thing I do want to mention is that if you're asking yourself, well, what's the web engine that Tizen is using to actually render the UI? And right now it's using the Chrome 56. So that's a little, not as recent as we wanted to, but it's pretty there. And you are able to use some pretty recent edge technologies, web APIs, WebGL, et cetera, et cetera. And another example, you can use jQuery. You could plug in jQuery if you want. You could plug in other libraries. You could plug in Bootstrap if you want. I do want to mention that Samsung has created its own library, which is called it's spelled TAU, which is Tizen Advanced UI. It's their version of Bootstrap, Twitter Bootstrap. So you can create watch interfaces specifically for the Samsung watches. So next, so that's how you create a really basic app. And next, I'm going to just show you how to access some hardware sensors. So in this, I just created a project already, and I'm going to show you some of the JavaScript that it's used to access some of the sensors. So if I want to access hardware, a heart rate monitor sensor, this is some of the code that you would need. But the main aspects of this code, is in this area. So when we're accessing health information from the hardware sensor, we're actually calling this API using web technologies. So if you go to, so I'm going to grab this. So the human activity monitor, it's the actual API. If I go back to our website guides, go to sensors, and you'll notice that there's a section for the human activity monitor. And if you go to this website, you can actually, copy paste some of that code, which I did just to show just an example. And you could use this code to just plug and play and deploy your watch app. So I'm going to go back. So in order for you to actually access the sensors, again, you have to first start it. So you're going to have to call this API first. And if you notice that there's a specific string here called pedometer, so that's actually accessing your step count. So once you start that, it's going to tell the hardware, it's like, hey, I want step count, start it, give me that data. And to actually capture that data so we can use it to push it into our UI, you're going to call a callback function. And we're going to tell it, hey, give me the data. It also has a string called pedometer telling the API, hey, give me this data. And then you can do another callback function with one parameter. And we're just going to put in a variable called step status, really simple here. And then we're going to, so there's two. So this API actually has two sets of information. You could grab the step status or the step count. So the step status is, for example, am I walking, am I running, am I idle? And I'm going to show you an example of how that's utilized. And the cumulative step count is the number of steps you've taken. So as you're walking, you're taking steps, and if you stop, it's going to stop. And if the app it's in the background, if you continue to walk, it's going to continue to accumulate your steps. It's going to record your steps. So let's see how that works. Any questions so far? No? Cool. Okay. So, also want to mention that I want to access the heart rate information as well. This one's a little easier. Just one liner here. Let's see. Okay. Oh, this is supposed to be HRM. Okay, let me double check that. Yeah, so if I want to access the heart rate monitor data, you want to start it first. I'm going to just plug it in here. Save that. And then I'm going to deploy it. Okay. If you notice down here in the bottom left corner, it's packaging all the files and creating a WGT extension, which is the wearable extension for Tizen. Let me go back. So if you can see, we've actually successfully deployed our watch app onto the emulator. And you notice that it says not moving, which correlates to the pedometer API, the human activity pedometer API. And if you notice right at the top, that string there, it's called that's for the heart rate monitor. So nothing's happening right now because there's no data going in there, but it's initiated, so we at least know that it's working. So if I want to actually simulate some information on the emulator here, all I do is right-click on the emulator and select the control panel. I'm going to take a little beat here and just show you that you can. This is actually, I think this is really cool, especially if you don't have access to hardware. You could definitely play with a lot of features from the actual watch. For example, the battery. You can simulate battery, USB connections, NFC location. If you want to simulate a call, you could do that too. If you want to test, if you want to do test for memory when the memory is running out, and show the user that hey, you don't have any more memory, you can simulate that. Hardware, if you want to access files in the hardware, you could also do that. Sensors is gyro, live proximity, pressure, et cetera, et cetera. So right now we're gonna simulate these two features here, the heart rate and the pedometer. So I'm gonna just click on the pedometer and simulate that. If you notice that so it's working, so that's good. So that's a good sign. Cool. So if you want to simulate heart rate, you could definitely just use this little tool here to scroll back and forth, left and right, and you could do that. So, okay. Cool. Why didn't it work? Okay, because I probably didn't add it to my index. Oh, yeah. So it's really basic here. Simple HTML. Nothing really fancy. So I'm going to save this, and I want to launch it again. I could just click this. There's a few ways you can do this. You can right-click, run as a Tizen web application. The other way is by clicking this little triangle here on the top left corner, and selecting the heart rate monitor app. I'm going to do that. Okay, let's do it. And it should, so they're right next to each other, so I'm going to do this. Save it. There you go. So my heart rate's at 145 right now, so that's not a good thing. Go down a little bit. Select the heart rate feature, and then we just scroll left and right, and you can notice that we can simulate heart rate data. And via your logic, your business logic, you can create any type of situation, use case situation, using the data. So, all right. So let's close that. Any questions so far? Anybody? No? Okay. So for the main event, I'm actually going to put this on the watch because I do have one. Anybody else have a Samsung watch in this room? No? Okay. So I've created some other sample applications that I've installed on my watch, and I currently have the Samsung Galaxy Watch, which is the model before the Active and the Active 2. I'm going to close this. Okay. Power off. Let's quit that really quick. if I want to see this running on my Samsung Galaxy Watch, all I have to do is search for it on the same network. So you want to connect your laptop and your Samsung Watch to the same network, and to deploy the application you just created to the hardware. So I'm going to do that. I'm actually going to use my mobile hotspot. So you can use your mobile hotspot or the Wi-Fi network. I'm going to connect to mine. So mine is Galaxy One. And then I'm actually having this one. So my watch is connected to my mobile hotspot. And I'm just going to click back here. I'm going to move this to the side a little bit. And then I'm going to click on this little right area here. And then you'll notice that the switch turns on. Close it. I'm going to shrink this. And then you notice up here that the IDE has detected the Samsung smartwatch, and it's using the IP address of the watch. So that's how the IDE connects to the watch itself. So it's selected. Now I want to deploy to the watch. So if you notice on the bottom left corner of the IDE, it's packaging all the files. And there you go. Pretty simple. The reason why it says loading is because I haven't started walking yet. So as soon as I start walking, the data will be displayed. But you can see that if I turn this around, the heart rate monitor sensor is going off. So it's actually trying to detect my heart rate beat. So if I just put my finger, turn this around, oops. I'm going to access. If you want to access the app, just click on this. I'm going to put my finger in the back. Oh no, sorry. Let's see what's my heart rate right now. It's not detecting. Try it again. I might have to put it on my wrist because it has to be tightly firmed, otherwise it's not going to detect it. So let me try this really quickly. Yeah, right. I'm not moving. That's fine. So I'm gonna try that again. Come on, guy. I'm actually not dead. I do have a heartbeat. I'm not a vampire. Oh, there you go. Finally. Jeez. Thank you. I'm alive. Yay. Excellent. So if I start walking, then I'll see the footsteps. So there you go. So it's really pretty straightforward. It's not grandiose. You can definitely create your own watch apps today once you install everything on your box. But the next thing I want to show you is some other applications that you could do with the watch. So I was able to access the GPS. So there's two versions of the watch. One of them has the LTE, which is an eSIM, so you can make calls with it. So this one, I can actually call you with the watch with this version. And there's another one which doesn't have it, but it does have the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly demonstrate the GPS. I hope I think there's a few cell towers around here. I don't know if the interior is going to affect the demo, but I'm just going to go ahead and demonstrate that really quickly. Oh, so I'm actually... So this is a simple Node.js server with socket.io. And I'm going to, just to show you the app, it's running on my Samsung Galaxy Watch. I'm going to navigate to the app. And then I'm using the bezel to access my watch app. So here's an app that I made called GPS. And there it is. And I'm going to just click ready. Sometimes this thing doesn't work. So it's looking for my GPS coordinates. And I probably might need to move. There you go. So it knows where I am. Why is it not showing? Go back. Maybe I need to work along because. Yeah, it's trying to pinpoint my location. I'm supposed to be over here. I'll try this, refresh this. Try it again, 1 second. Oh, you know why? I'm going to turn off the... I'm going to force it to use the mobile data, the GPS, so I forgot to do that. I'm also going to disconnect from this. So there you go. If you guys see it on the monitor, there's my GPS. So I'm going to actually walk around and hopefully you catch it. I don't know if I can see it, but if it's moving or not. Again, the being inside this building might affect it, so I don't know if it's actually... Maybe if it's down that side. It might be affecting the... There you go. So, I have to be closer to the window because of the cell towers and not. So there you have it. So that's using the GPS from the actual watch, and using that data. So I'm using socket.io to push it into the front end here, the HTML. So what I also did is actually use the library, the socket.io library, which is the JavaScript file, and plugged it in my Samsung Watch app. So, right. Any questions so far? So one last demo for this session, and that's going to be the VR. And for that, I need to connect to my hotspot again. But technically, you could do this live on a server as well. Give me one moment. Connect to my internet hotspot. Okay. So for this one, so the feature that I use for this example, I use a gyro, which is the XYZ coordinates of the watch. So that's another aspect. That's another feature that you can access using the Tizen Ide Studio. So I'm gonna click on so that's another application that I have. I'm going to access it using Gyro. Yeah. So right now you can see that it's detecting the motion of the watch. So if I tilt it, it's really super sensitive. So even while it's still, it's kind of moving. And again, what I use for the front end, I use the Node.js to do for the VR. And I also did something else, which is I'm using MongoDB to store the information. And the reason why I do that is because I was learning MongoDB and seeing what I could do for future projects. If I want to access that information again, you could use whatever database technology you want. So you notice that I'm also using Socket.io for this example. And this is just telling me that the front end is connected to my server, my Node.js server. So I'm going to minimize this, and there it is. I'm going to try to so technically it should be working. I'm going to try to double check. For this example, I'm just going to show this little box moving. So if I slowly move this, you can see that the square is moving. The 3D object is moving. So if I move it really fast, it's going to glitch a little bit. So again, some improvements to be made. But this is really cool. I mean, I was just talking to another person the other day that as an example, if somebody got a heart attack, usually one of the sides of your body becomes immobile. For example, your arm. And what if you don't have access to a doctor, or you just can't move, can't leave the house? You could definitely remote into interface via the web. And on the other side, the doctor's like, "Oh, can you put on your watch and show me how much progress you've made? How much of your arm can you move? Can you move your wrist? Can you move your wrist?" And with this example, the doctor can clearly see how much has this incident has affected you. So, and then again, whatever backend data you want to use, you can store this information, and you can log that every day and see if you made any progress. And definitely, the doctors can definitely prescribe something to you based on this information. And you can create graphs, you can create whatever. Now that you have access to that information, you can prescribe, other things. So that's really cool. I think that's super, super cool. That I also want to mention that the reason why I chose Samsung to develop apps on the Samsung is because it has you can access development via HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I mean, if you like C++, that's cool. You know, nothing against C# and C++ and whatnot. Or Swift. If you want to do Swift to create your apps, that's cool too. If you want to create watch apps via Android, that's cool too. But for me, because I already know web development, and I mean, I could do this like in a few days, few weeks, versus like learning another language. If that's what you want to do, challenge yourself. You want to learn another language to, you know, as an indie developer, a lot of people do learn other languages to develop, you know, to kind of broaden their clientele, whatever your options are. And for me, the first thing I thought was let's just do a watch app on the Samsung Galaxy Watch. So there you have it. Any questions so far? Yes, sir. So yeah, it's all on the watch. Yeah, it's on pushing all that data, those 3 coordinates, the X, Y, Z, onto the server, and then it's being captured on the front end using Saka.io. So it's same. It's like I'm chatting. I'm literally chatting from the watch to the front end. So this is A-Frame. Oh, I forgot to mention, this is A-Frame, basic A-Frame VR. So, yeah, super basic scene. You can find the code for this online to create a basic scene. Yeah. So, and I think the next step for me is to use augmented reality, use GPS. Now that I have a GPS coordinates, I could also integrate that feature into another experimental project. But the sky's the limit. You know, the technology is there. Web has definitely enabled developers to kind of prototype a little quicker, ideate much faster via wearable IoT, et cetera, et cetera. And Samsung has definitely has given me the opportunity to do that. So, and then yeah. So, any questions? Other questions? Questions? Yes, sir. Yeah, I could definitely, if anybody's curious, I could definitely send the project to you so you can like tinker around with it, and also put other links in case you want to learn more. So if just hit me up, and then I'll send you my stuff. So yeah, and I'll also provide the slides. I have slides that you can use too to reference with links to the code, the web APIs. Et cetera. It's pretty much going to go link back to developer.samsung.com, but more accessible. So, and so there's another example that I have here, which is the same the human activity, the sensors that I'm showing here, and that one. I created another app for that. So let me just quickly show you that, and then we'll call it a day. So again, I don't have the watch on, so it displays a -3 because it doesn't know the heart rate value. So you're -3, so you're like dead, like 3 seconds or something. I don't know. So I'm just gonna go ahead and send this some data, and it's gonna display it on the VR scene. So really cool stuff. I mean, you could do so many things with this. The sky's the limit, especially with wearables and IoT, and displaying it in an AR or VR scene. And yeah, you can do so many things with this. And so, you can actually put this on because this is VR ready. You could, if you have a headset, Daydream, Daydream. Discontinued, but if you use Samsung VR, Oculus, anything that has a web-enabled application, you could definitely put this on and track anything really. If you have a watch, if you created an application with a watch, you could track health, you could track somebody's location, yeah, all that stuff. Any questions? Any other questions? Cool. Am I behind or? Cool. With that, I'm going to end that. And again, if you have any questions, we'll meet me later or stay connected and we'll chat. All right. Thank you.